Welcome Will Kennedy, producer, engineer, and immersive mixer. How has immersive been treating you these days, and Atmos and that whole new world?
It's been incredible. I have to say, you know, I partnered up with Matt Wallace of Faith No More and Maroon Five fame. We've been working together, him as producer, me as engineer, since 2007. And at a certain point, after engineering a whole bunch of projects with Matt, I went out on my own for a while, and then we kind of reconnected. We stayed working together over the years, but just less often.
Yeah.
I'd be producing things and engineering them myself, and then he was doing the same. As we all know, budgets came down significantly in the recording business, so he just couldn't afford to hire the crew of people that he used to, and then somebody kind of put a bug, I think, separately in both of our ears about the immersive thing. And honestly, neither of us were fans. We'd both been through the 5.1 thing in the 90s and early 2000s. Matt's a little older than I am, so he'd sort of seen the tail end of quad when that was happening. And
What's that?
quad being four speakers in the room. That was like a 1970s
Oh, I didn't
thing.
even know about that. It
Yeah.
was wow. We'll get into that. I'm curious about that too. We'll get into that
I don't
later.
know a whole lot about it
Oh,
because it's a
okay.
little before my time. I just know that it existed and I've heard a few things. But neither of those formats really took off. So when, hey, here's this new immersive format, we're trying this for the third time now, and we're kind of like, oh, okay. And I know Matt had, and I think he even told the story here. Matt had gone and heard it at the Dolby Theater with a big group of people, and was, in the theater, anything sounds great in a big theater with a big sound system. And then he heard it on a small consumer type device and wasn't impressed. And he told me that story. I was like, all right, like that just fits the narrative we had in our head
Mm-hmm.
already. And then maybe just about 2 years ago now, our friend Brad Wood, who's an amazing producer and engineer and mixer, he and I were cycling buddies, and he was saying, I'm going to build an Atmos system in my home studio. And I was like, really? What's drawing you to it? And he's like, there's a lot of reasons. And, he kind of went into what was going on behind the scenes, and what he felt about the format when he heard it. And Matt and I were still both like, He's like, come over, come over.
Yeah.
And Brad, his one of the first records he ever worked on was Liz Phair's Exile in Guyville, which is, hugely successful and influential and all that. And he had just finished up a new record with Liz, and he was doing Atmos mixes of it. And he's like, Matt and I are like, we'd love to hear what you're doing with the Atmos on that. We sat down. There was one song in particular, and I always forget the name. I wish I could remember it. But he played it for us, and Matt and I both went, oh, wait a minute. This is different. This is making me feel something that I never felt when I listened to anything done in 5.1, for sure. So something new is happening here.
What was the? I mean, I'm sure there's multiple reasons, but what was like the main reason why you guys in that moment decided, okay, this is the future? Like, what was it specifically about it?
I think there's a few things at play there. If I'm being deeply honest, the first thing for both of us is here's an opportunity to do something creative in the mixing, production, engineering space that neither of us felt had been possible for a long time. Not that it's not creative working in stereo, it 100% is, but after you do it for a long time, and Matt's been at it for close to 40 years, I've been at it for over 20, you really start to refine the process to a point where every project that comes in, you're sort of reaching into a bag of tricks. And
Right.
you're always trying to do something different, but that different thing, like just satisfying your need to do something different on a production or a mix or whatever, isn't necessarily serving the music. And
Sure.
that's the first part of the gig, right? So if you've done something 1,000 times or 2 times, if it's the right thing for the mix or for the production, that's what you do.
Yeah.
And like with anything, the longer you do it, the more you've seen, the less anything becomes sort of new and cool. And here was this basically wide open expanse, where we could play a part in moving music into an entirely new format. And I say all the time, it's a lot like moving from mono to stereo. And you listen to early stereo mixes and they sound weird now because
Yeah. Yeah.
in the late 50s and early 60s when stereo started taking hold, nobody knew what the rules were, right? The idea, and obviously people are working on 2-track, 3-track, 4-track.
Yeah.
There's not a lot to do in that format. And then like, oh, we need more tracks, and then we can do more of the. What happens if we record the same thing twice and then pan it on one side and the other? Like, these are all discoveries that people made along the way that eventually kind of became rules that we all follow.
Sure. Yeah.
And we got really, really good at making stuff for stereo. And to have this opportunity to be part of a new wave of, like, to be part of the group that's making the rules or setting the stage for what comes in the future for this format was really exciting to both of us.
Yeah.
Knowing that with the underpinning be, hey, there is an opportunity to do something cool and creative and emotional with this technology that is something more than what can be achieved in stereo. One of the other, as boring as it is, one of the other considerations is financial. It's not sexy, but there was a need for this to be done,
Yeah.
and we could fill that need. So yeah, but that's secondary, right? If neither of us were excited about it, no way. Neither of us are wired to be like, oh, let's do this thing we don't like.
Right, because I think, yeah, like you said, when you're sitting there with Brad, like you maybe realize in that moment, like, because for me, I remember like 5.1, like I liked it and it was exciting for like, TV, film, and like in the theater, and then yeah, there's some really cool like live albums that are mixed in 5.1. But what do you feel the differences between? Why is Atmos so much more expansive than 5.1? Is it just simply because there's more speakers and more you can do, or like why do you feel like you've attached on more to Atmos than like the 5.1 stuff?
So that's kind of two questions. In terms of why it's going to take off, there's a lot of pieces to that. In terms of the emotional connection we had, I don't know that there's any word for it other than immersion. I never felt immersed in a 5.1 mix. I felt
Gotcha.
like there were
Yeah.
things coming from multiple directions that I hadn't experienced before, but the journey of, like, once Matt and I had built our Atmos system and we sat down and we started doing the work, we realized that, and this to me is super important, we thought, I think like everybody does, and especially people with a lot of experience, like, oh, okay, I know how 5.1 works. I know how stereo works. This is just going to be kind of an upgraded version of that. And it's absolutely not. There are new rules. It's not, as a friend of mine says, it's not just advanced panning, right? You have to treat things differently. You have to really understand what is the impact, what's going to change about the impact of this thing if it's panned to the front or to the sides or to the rear or halfway. What happens when I pull it towards the middle of the room? Like, in all of that then relates to, how is this all going to sound when this system folds it down to headphones? And that translation, because the headphone thing, that's how most of our audience is hearing it right now and probably will be for a long time.
Yeah.
That translation is super, super, super important. So then learning where the guardrails are with, okay, well, in the room, if we make this move with this thing, or if we treat it in a specific way, well, then put on the headphones. Does it still sound good? And learning where those guardrails are and
Yeah.
how to build mixes around all of that.
For sure. Yeah, and I think it's like you said, it's so much more immersive because like with the 5.1, 5 in a sub.
Yeah,
Okay,
so it was three
five.
across the
Right, right.
front, two in the back, and actually not a sub. That's an important distinction with any kind of either surround or Atmos slash immersive system. I think we're all used to using subwoofer as a shorthand because so many of us have subwoofers that we use with our stereo setups. But there's a specific use for that subwoofer, and
Yeah,
it's called bass management. So in what we'll call a 2.1 system, a stereo plus a sub, that sub is filling in. It's constantly playing and sort of backfilling your low end to make up for what your main speakers can't do.
right.
The kind of sub that is being used in a surround or Atmos system is called a low frequency effects or LFE speaker. That is not playing all the time. It is not doing backfill. It is a speaker that you specifically send something to just like you would any other speaker, except all it puts out is low frequencies.
Right.
And the reason for that, and again, you have to remember this system, Atmos specifically, was designed first for post-production for theaters. So low frequency effects means exactly that. You have an explosion in a movie, you want to rattle the seats, you send that to your low frequency effects
Hell
speaker,
yeah.
and
Fuck yeah.
now you get that low end
Yeah.
rumble. But it's not running all the time. And for music purposes, how you use that, you have to be very careful about it, how you manage what you're feeding to it. And there's all sorts of stuff, technical stuff that goes into that. But just to say that when you look at an Atmos system and you see a sub, it's not doing what you're used to in your 2.1 system.
Right. So the with Atmos, there's the don't you have you can have like the normal sub, then you have like don't you guys have like a few subs, right?
We actually have, so the Atmos system, we have a separate stereo setup. We have two ProAct speakers and a Yamaha bass management sub that only works with those ProActs. When we're doing Atmos mixing, we've got the Atmos array, which is all Cali speakers, and then we have, and this is specific to our situation, we have two subs in there. One for bass management, which is doing exactly what I said. It's sort of backfilling what the rest of the array speakers can't do. And then we have the LFE sub.
Nice.
The reason we have two is when we had the room tuned by Dolby, which is a standard thing that's done in all Atmos studios, the Dolby tech who came in said, listen, because your space is the size it is, you could really use a little extra boost on the bottom end. So it's probably worth it to put in a bass management sub. So that's why we did it. But the standard setup for Atmos is what's called 7.1.4. So 7 speakers at head level, 3 across the front, 2 on the sides, 2 in the rear. The point one is the LFE subwoofer, and then 4 speakers above you. And then you can scale it up from there.
Yeah, and I think like when you're saying the difference between, the major difference between the 5.1 and then when you advance up into Atmos, you said it's like you're definitely feeling immersed. So I think obviously having the speakers above you is like a major addition to, because it's like you're not just hearing it from, your ear level. It's above you and behind you, I guess, is still kind of ear level, but like you're hearing it from above you. I mean, seems like it's what is creating more of that immersion, right?
I feel like, after Matt and I have been at this for over a year and a half, we've done around 200 mixes at this point. And through a lot of experimentation and like even just kind of sitting there and wondering to myself, well, what happened? Because I can switch from the full Atmos array to just 7.1 without the top speakers, or just 5.1. So I can hear the difference between those setups. And I know one of the first things I learned when we started mixing was the top speakers don't sound the way you expect them to sound. It's not this like directional, oh, there's something above me thing that goes on. And what I've realized over time is, like, when I shut those off, it's like lopping the top off of a mix.
Yeah.
It's really, you don't realize what's going on because you're thinking, well, are they doing anything? It doesn't sound like something's coming at me from above. But when you shut them off, boy, do you hear the difference.
So what do you find yourself the majority of the time? What do you find yourself putting up there in those speakers? Is it like cymbal shimmery high end or like maybe some kind of ambience? What do you find yourself throwing up there?
Depends on the mix, obviously. A lot of times, so we have specific 7.1.4 reverbs. So if we're using those, which we use a lot, there's always reverb going on up there. In terms of like placing instruments up there,
Yeah.
usually it's not like, say, a rhythm guitar, a keyboard part, or strings that go throughout an entire song. It's more often momentary stuff. Like we did, one of the best examples is we did the B-52's Love Shack in Atmos. And the horn parts in that we actually put above. They're momentary.
Yeah.
It doesn't really sound like, again, it doesn't sound like the horns are diving down on you from above. They just sounded really nice up there. And it was a way to get them out of the way of some other stuff that we thought, hey, it'd be cool to uncover these parts that are kind of more constant
Yeah.
and always going on. And it worked out great. We experiment all the time with putting things up there. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. But I will say that, again, based on the headphone fold down, the way the headphone system is trying to trick you into believing something is coming from above you when there are no speakers up there is it tends to, this isn't exactly what it's doing, but to my ear, it's kind of rolling off some low end and adding some high end.
Okay.
And so you don't want to put like something with a lot of bass information in the top speakers because
Makes
you're going to
sense.
lose it in the headphones. And also the top speakers and I think it's just the way we perceive things, the way our ears and our brain work. When you put like something that's really bassy only in the top speakers, it doesn't have the kind of impact it's going to
Yeah.
have
Can imagine.
if
Yeah.
if it's coming at you from in front of you.
Yeah.
Even the sides, same issue.
Interesting. So yeah, I mean, what so far, like musically, what has been your favorite, or what genre seems to adapt to the Atmos setup, like in the most pleasing way, like from your experience so far? Like, as I remember, you showed me that big band
Oh yeah.
song you did, which was incredible. It sounded great, by the way. I
Oh,
love
thank you.
that. I mean, that seemed to be an amazing example of like the benefits of Atmos, because it was like it felt like you're in there in the room with the band, like you're at the show.
Yeah.
So what? Yeah, from your experience so far, what seems to translate the best?
So it depends on what you're looking for out of it. Like that big band thing, that to me is almost the low hanging fruit. Big band orchestral stuff that is recorded very much as a photograph of what's happening in a space,
Yeah.
right? So the way I did the big band thing, the way I spread it out in Atmos was to basically place you in the center of the studio while we were tracking, so you could feel what it was like to stand in that live room with the saxophones on your left side, the trumpets in front of you, and the
Yeah.
trombones down the right side. I certainly wasn't thinking about that when I tracked it. I was tracking it the way I know how to track big band for stereo. It just happened that it spread out beautifully in Atmos and created that effect. That I just tripped over that. And then I realized, oh, right. If everything's kind of static and you're not trying to create a sort of magical, mystical audio world,
Yeah.
which we often are in other genres, Atmos is killer at doing it because that's sort of easy. Nothing's moving. We're not using crazy effects. It's a, like I said, it's a static kind of photo of what happened in the room. But we've done other stuff like the B-52's thing. was awesome and worked really well for a couple of reasons. One, that song was recorded like it was a party, right? So we were able to sort of create a mix that, even though everything was overdubbed, like the big band thing was one take with the full band, no overdubs. The B-52s thing, obviously heavily produced and overdubbed and all that
Yeah.
stuff. And because of the party atmosphere, we're able to put you in the middle of the party. You know, the clapping and the cheering and everything that it turns out goes on throughout the whole song, we can kind of put to the sides or behind you, and then have most of the band up front, and then the little ancillary things like the horns, or there's a cool guitar part that plays through the whole song. You can't hear all that well in the stereo, but it's a really cool thing to listen to. We could place that somewhere else. Like, that spread out really nicely. I think EDM stuff or hip hop, anything that's sample based, where you don't have to, or even genres that are recorded that are mainly like one mic recordings of whatever the instruments are. That stuff's really easy to move around in place. As soon as you get into anything that's recorded as sort of a stereo matrix of something, drum kit being the perfect example, now it gets hard. Like, you would think, oh, I've got all these microphones on the drum kit, but they're all working in concert with, say, a pair of overhead microphones.
Sure, there's a lot of bleed, right?
Yeah, and there's bleed between them. It's meant to be a stereo picture, right? Not a, okay, you can't just take the kick drum out of the picture and
Yeah.
put it somewhere else in 3 dimensions. Like, imagine doing that with an actual photograph,
Right.
right?
Right.
It's kind of the same thing. And suddenly the stereo image collapses, and now you've got something that doesn't have the same impact musically. So there's a lot of, you really have to be aware of the intent. And not only that, but at least right now, the stereo mix is happening before the Atmos mix. So whether that be, we're working on obviously older catalog stuff, and even with, brand new releases, the stereo mix is always being done first at this point. So the artist, either years ago or today, has spent a very long time making that stereo thing be the best representation of their vision that it can be. And we have to honor that, right? So we can't just pull apart, unless we're given the marching orders to.
Sure.
We
Yeah.
can't just pull apart all the hard work they did, throw it around in different places, go, well, this makes us feel good. So,
Yeah.
and you don't understand the format yet, so this is fine. No, they have to be happy with it. They have to feel like, even though it's a new format with all these new possibilities, it's representing what they want to say with their music. That's first and foremost.
Sure. So when you find yourself with a project like that where you want to stay very true to the original stereo mix, that, to me, that would bring up a challenging project, because it's like, okay, well, we can't really spread things around. So in a situation like that, what do you find yourselves doing? Like, maybe adding just more atmosphere, like roominess, like just kind of, reverbs behind and above, but not doing too much, obviously. So what kind of stuff have you done? Like, like you said, on the B-52s, you put that guitar lick, you made that
Right.
more audible in different speakers. But yeah, I mean, what would you say? What kind of techniques would you do with that kind of an approach when you have to leave the stereo mix true to itself?
So sometimes we can't do much. Maybe if it's appropriate, and this gets into very dangerous territory, and we have to be very careful and consult with everybody involved to make sure that they're okay with it. Sometimes if it's an older catalog thing, maybe part of our gig is, well, we can improve the sonics of this a little bit. It still has to sound the way, like, the vibe has to stay the same. It doesn't matter how we might feel about the initial recording of that.
Yeah.
The catalog stuff, especially we're working on, these are hits. These are generationally popular pieces of music. Our job is not to come in and reinvent them.
Right.
But we do have this opportunity. So where can we improve that would be, Matt says all the time, he's like, we try to put ourselves in the headspace of the producers and the artists who initially made it. And if we're going to make a change of any kind, how would they feel about it? Or we'll talk to them directly if they're still around,
Sure.
and make sure that they're okay with what we're doing. But sometimes it means we're not doing very much, right? We're adding, maybe there's some ambience in the, in the room to make you feel like you're sort of watching a concert.
Yeah.
But that can get challenging too, because a lot of, especially like 70s and early 80s rock stuff, very dry.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So if we add ambience to it, now it's got a vibe that it didn't have before. So how far can we push that? I think it all ultimately comes down to, just because we have the power to make a change doesn't mean that the change is necessary.
Sure.
Right.
Sure.
Just because we can do a thing doesn't mean we should do a thing. So I think more often it comes down to, how was the stuff produced initially? And we learned that lesson. Like, there's two projects that I'm thinking of in terms of rock music. One of them was early on, because Matt produced it and Warner was willing to give us the tracks for it, we were able to do Faith No More's Epic. And we pulled up those tracks and realized Matt had, in 1989, I guess it was, tracked 4 rhythm guitars for
Okay.
that song,
Yeah.
right? So now here's this, the production dictated, wow, now we can have, instead of Matt piling all 4 of those into 2 speakers, now we can have 2 of them in one set of speakers and 2 of them coming at you from behind from another set of speakers. And here's this whole new impact that the song can have. And that was awesome. Another thing that we worked on, I think the results are equally great, but we were limited by the original production, was we did Dio's Holy Diver.
Yes.
Now, it sounds amazing in Atmos, but it doesn't sound amazing because we could do those kind of spatial tricks. It sounds amazing because we were very careful about, like, all we had was 2 guitars, bass, drums, and vocals. And sometimes there might be a guitar solo with a harmony. And now, okay, well, this harmony we can have come from somewhere else. But if you want the music to have the impact that the stereo version has, that was intended. It was very specifically produced for 2 speakers, right? So we have to be careful about, if we pull stuff away. We had this problem with the B-52s too. We did try spreading stuff all over the room, and the whole mix collapsed.
Mm-hmm.
Same with the Dio stuff. If we pull too much of it away from the center, now the overall experience you're having isn't as powerful.
Yeah.
So that's that's an ongoing conversation that we're always having about, like, are we doing justice to, do we need to make this more spatial? Are there opportunities to do it? And sometimes there are, and sometimes there aren't. And I think until production catches up with the technology, that's going to be an ongoing discussion that happens on every project. The newer projects, because people tend to track so much more stuff now, even though it's still stereo.
Way too much.
Yeah, we often have way more possibilities with the newer stuff than we have with the older catalog stuff.
Like the I Prevail stuff you guys did that you showed me, like, that's obviously, there's so much more tracks in production.
Yeah.
So there's more to put spaced around in different speakers. So that makes a lot of sense. And I think what you said about, retaining the original stereo mix and just doing very little, I think regardless if a lot has been done within Atmos, a lot has been moved around or not, I think the majority of listeners will appreciate it, like the Dio or the B-52s. Just because not a lot has been moved around doesn't mean doesn't feel immersive. Like, you can have, like, you said, you have you put reverbs around you, and just subtle things still will make it that much more enjoyable in Atmos. It doesn't have to be like these major changes, like you said.
Yeah.
So I think there's a lot of value in that as well. And when people start to listen to, because I know, like, a lot of the Teslas and a lot of the cars start to have Atmos setups by default.
Yeah.
So a lot of people are going to have that ability to listen in their car. And regardless if there's a lot moving around at all times or not, I still think whatever can be done in Atmos to suit the song a lot of people will appreciate.
That's the key. It's not about the technology. Nobody cares about all the things we can do with this technology. What they care about is how the music makes them feel.
Sure.
And
Absolutely.
unless the technology is serving the music, then it's pointless. And you make that argument about any technology. So 100% at the top of our list is this making me feel something that is either similar to or different from, but still impactful in the way this stereo mix is. We never want to come in with something that's less impressive than that, right?
Yeah.
That's first and foremost, because otherwise, what are we doing this for?
Sure. Right. Do you think that studios? I know, like, the days of the major studios. I mean, there's still quite a few of them that exist, but a lot of them have closed down. But I'm thinking, since Atmos is becoming more and more popular, and I know there are studios that have already started adopting this, but do you think more studios in the future will be built out to track and produce in Atmos as well? So, like, for example, in the actual tracking and production stage, people are thinking, okay, well, we have these rhythm guitars, and but we want to put this instrument in the back speaker. So, like, the actual production will be completed with the thought of Atmos in mind. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and so I think that's all heavily dependent on the overall success of the format. I have reason to believe it's not going anywhere anytime soon. The question is, like, to answer the studio question, we'll have to first find out whether or not Atmos becomes a real competitor with stereo. Like, is this the future? Is everybody going to be consuming Atmos mixes? Are artists, and it's not going to be the current crop of artists, it's going to be the next generation that comes up.
Yeah.
Are they going to adopt and push for being able to use this palette in a more expansive way? We're also a little bit hamstrung technologically right now. Atmos is I know that Apple would probably love me to say, oh, Logic does Atmos, so everybody can do it. Everybody has it at their disposal. It's just not true. The technology, the computing power that's necessary to do this correctly in a recording scenario is still a ways off.
Yeah,
We
I can
can
imagine that.
mix. The amount of latency or system delay that's happening while we mix is huge. In order for the Dolby software that's running in the background to have time to do all the processing it has to do to put things in the correct place.
Gotcha. Yeah, I don't know. I can see it being like maybe in 10 years, stereo Atmos will be the new stereo, and then it's like, you go to your streaming, you go to your Netflix, and 99.9% of everything is in Atmos by default, and we could revert back to stereo if you like. But I can see that happening. So yeah, I think if that indeed does happen, then studios will be like set up in Atmos. You can go in and track with Atmos in
Yeah.
mind, and then the software will get better, and you can maybe the immersive headphone experience will get better, so you don't necessarily have to have the expensive IO and monitoring like you guys do. Like,
Mm-hmm.
you could the technology get better over the years, so where you can do the majority of the mixing in headphones, but then maybe you can come to a studio like yours and
Mm-hmm.
check it and whatnot. But yeah, I can
There are
totally.
people doing that now,
Yeah.
and doing it successfully. I think and I, I think it's important to say that what you can't do successfully, or at least with any amount of repeatability, is work only on headphones. And I know that's a self-serving thing for me as an Atmos studio co-owner to say, but it's really the case right now. We've had some people come in to check out their mixes, and they do sound fine in the headphones, but they're completely sideways on the speakers. We've had other people nail it. We've had other people nail it one time, but not another time. And because we're in a position of being able to, and we do spend probably over the course of an entire mix, where on stereo, you just spend all your time on speakers, kind of check headphones at some point just to make sure everything's translating. But again, we've gotten really good at the stereo stuff. So, people who are professionals know whether or not they've nailed it kind of on the, when they hear it coming out of the speakers.
Gotcha.
Not the case with Atmos. So we're probably like 50-50 speaker array headphones, constantly making sure that whatever moves we're making sound good in both places as opposed to just one or the other.
And do you find, as of right now, what like headphone or earbud experience has been ideal? I know there's like the Apple what are the EarPod Pros, like those are set up for spatial, right? But like, what are there any specific headphones that you find yourself preferring for referencing?
So again, no, it feels like nothing about this is simple on the technical side. So there's basically two different headphone experiences that exist out there right now. One of them is Dolby's, and one of them is Apple's. And Apple actually has two slightly different ones. So the Dolby one, very simple. We make a wave file that looks like your normal stereo wave file. You wouldn't know that there's any difference between it and a regular stereo wave file. But it's got all of the Dolby binaural calculations baked into the audio. So it's never meant to be played on speakers. And in fact, it'll sound a little weird if you play it on speakers. It's only meant to be experienced on headphones, but it can be played back on any device from any place that you can play back a standard wave file with any set of headphones, and you get the Dolby binaural experience. Apple's works differently. They don't bake the information into the files. That those calculations are actually being done by your device and by your headphones.
Interesting. Okay.
So at least when they started. So spatial audio is Atmos still at its core. It's using an Atmos file, or what we call an ADM.BWF file. They're then they're kind of putting their own wrapper around Atmos to work specifically with their devices and their headphones. A big part of that was they wanted to be able to do their head tracking thing. So,
Okay.
they can create an experience for you if you've got their headphones and you're listening on an Apple device, where if you're sitting in the room, looking forward, excuse me, again, in the Atmos array, if I don't have headphones, I'm listening on speakers, I turn my head. If the vocal's in front, now the vocal's on my right. Now the vocal's on my left. The Apple spatial audio with head tracking can create that same experience.
Wow.
Where, you turn your head and the mix moves like you're in the room.
Wow. Okay.
How much people like or dislike that is an open question, but all of those calculations are being done on the devices. So you need a specific device. You need their specific headphones. And I believe the ones that will do it right now are the Gen 3 AirPods, the AirPod Pros, and the AirPod Maxes. I think there might be a Beats headphone that does it as well, because Beats is owned by Apple. At some point last summer, Apple decided maybe we need to open up the ecosystem a little bit more, and they now have a version of spatial audio that works with other Bluetooth headphones, but just minus the head tracking, and including some information that we can build into as metadata, build into the mixes that the Dolby version was using that Apple's version wasn't.
Gotcha.
So there's kind of three now, but the non-head tracked, use whatever Bluetooth headphones you want version of Apple's lands somewhere in between the full head track spatial audio experience and the Dolby experience. They do sound different from one another. So again, we're listening to the Apple version when we're mixing. We're listening to the Dolby version when we're mixing, and we're trying to land the mix in a place where even if everything isn't perfect, it's as good an experience as it can be in all three places.
Yeah, it's trying to average it out.
Yeah. And ultimately, both Apple and Dolby, like these are the headphone thing is a moving target. right? The speaker experience, there's no crazy calculations going on other than we place the thing here and the software needs to figure out how much to put out of various speakers to make it sound like it's coming from a specific place. But that experience is going to be relatively static in terms of what it's going to sound like over time. The headphone experience is a whole other story. Like Apple can do an update to spatial audio, and now a mix we did a year ago can sound different today.
True. Yeah. That's
Right.
also
So
concerning, right?
it's like if we were to say, oh, well, our biggest audience is Apple Music for Atmos, which it is right now, and we tailor everything specifically to that mix. Well, now if Apple decides to make a change, now our mix has changed.
Right.
And now maybe we made a bunch of concessions in the room or on the Dolby side that we wish we could take back because it changed in such a way that that change didn't matter anymore.
Right. Because you made a compromise in the room and in Dolby to get it to average out across all of them. But now that Apple has changed things, yeah, I see what you're saying.
And Dolby can change things as well. And what they're both shooting for is to have the headphone experience sound as much like the room experience as it can. So where we've kind of landed philosophically, and this, everything about, every decision we make and every philosophy we come up with about Atmos changes over time because we learn more things or changes are made in the technology. But our feeling is if we make sure the room sounds good, ultimately because the headphones are aiming at that target, then that's the probably the smartest play.
Right.
At least over the long term. Short term, maybe a different set of calculations.
Right, because you can't make it sound identical on everything. That's just never going to happen. Even with stereo, that's what we're still struggling with all these streaming platforms. No matter what you do,
Yeah,
it sounds different everywhere. You could try and average it out, but it's just impossible to sound the same everywhere. So I think what you said makes a lot of sense. Do the
and
best.
it's magnified with Atmos because the actual system underpinning the playback in all of these places is different. Right.
Yeah. So, yeah, I think Atmos is the future. It's the now and it's the future. And you guys are very heavily into it and deep into it already. You've been, I think Matt said you guys have been like a year and a half into it, right?
Yeah, we built the studio we started building it in September of 2021. We finished it middle of October. We had Dolby come in and tune the room, I think in early November of 2021. We started mixing soon after that. At first, just doing mixes of stuff we had access to kind of build a calling card for ourselves. And then, thankfully, we had some people pretty quickly come in, hear what we were doing, go, wow, this is great. Here's a paying gig, and then we were off to the races. And it's super exciting. It's great to work on. It's just great to work on these either classic or new records that people are really excited about and be able to hopefully bring something new to their listening experience that they can enjoy.
Absolutely. When I think about Atmos, I think about obviously, doing re-releases and like spreading things out, but I'm also imagining what the future holds, and if people will start to change their productions knowing that they want it to be done in Atmos. So it's like, because I work a lot in metal and there's different genres of metal where there's
No
a
way,
lot
you work in
going
metal?
on. If you couldn't tell. But yeah, there's certain genres that have, the basics of metal, like the heavy drums, bass, guitars, screaming vocals, but there are also genres that have orchestras and symphonic things going on and sound design and all kinds of shit. So I think those kind of genres will be perfect for Atmos because it's just such a challenge to mix those kind of things in stereo because you're trying to cram so much information into two speakers. So now being able to spread things out in Atmos, I think these genres specifically would be fantastic for Atmos because it's like you could have, the band in front of you, but then say you have the guitars, bass, vocals, drums up the center in the front of you like normal stereo, but I didn't have a lot of room before in the stereo mix for these horns and these strings and these choirs, so I'm going to put them here and I'm going to put them here. So I can see that becoming an extremely awesome Atmos like production in the future. I mean, I'm sure it's already happening, but
Which isn't to say by any stretch that there's anything wrong with the stereo mixes. There isn't. We have a built-in technical advantage that we have 10 more speakers at
Oh
our
yeah.
disposal, right? That's just, how do you beat that, right? And that to me is, that's what's possible with this, is those bands. I Prevail is a perfect example. So much detail and thought put into all of these layers upon layers of production elements, and ultimately, doesn't matter how many tracks you record. There's only two speakers in stereo. You can only fit so many things in two speakers.
Mm-hmm.
So you can record 1,000 tracks. That's great. Nobody's going to hear probably
900 of them.
990,
Yeah.
or yeah. Well, what would it be? 980 of them,
Sure. Yeah.
right? And you can, whereas we've got all the extra speakers. Well, now we can take this thing that you had to bury because something else needed to be heard musically at this point in the song. Well, we can just put it over here.
Precisely. Yeah, I think that's why it's going to be like a breath of fresh air for certain genres, because it's like, yeah, oh, now I can hear what this member was doing or what this instrument was doing that I couldn't hear in the stereo mix because everything was so crammed together. I think it's just going to be like, you know, opening a window. There's everything that I was missing. So yeah, I think that's going to be
And that's
fantastic.
another, like, it seems like a boring technical piece of the whole thing, but it's super important, is there is a cap on how loud we can make these mixes. And it's way quieter than stereo.
Yeah.
Now, that might sound like it's not as exciting, but what people don't realize is it's a horrible analogy, but I'm going to use it anyway. We've been like the frog in the pot of slowly boiling water over the years with making our music recordings louder and louder and louder and louder and louder, because just like a bright thing attracts our attention, a louder thing attracts our attention. So nobody wants their thing to be quieter than somebody else's because that seems less exciting to people. But there is a technical limit to how loud you can make. We're all working in the digital world. There's a hard cap on the loudest thing you can have. And most people don't realize that over the years, we haven't been making anything louder. We've been making the quietest things in the mix louder and louder and louder and louder and louder,
Yeah.
until the entire mix is barely changing. Like, there's no impact due to volume anymore. Everything, like, even when the band drops away and it's just a vocal, now that vocal just sucks up that entire space. It doesn't actually get quieter.
Right.
Well, because Atmos, the mixes have to be so much quieter, we're not having to apply crazy amounts of EQ to carve out the things we don't need from various instruments, or compress them to make sure everything gets heard in the way it's supposed to. We can just let them breathe and you can still hear them. And the result of that is the impact actually goes up, even though if you run the numbers on the file, the mix is quieter.
You just got to turn the volume up in your car and wherever you're listening. You just turn it up to where it feels good, and then it sounds fantastic, because like
Yeah.
you said, you have to hit that certain LUFS level, which was what again?
It's minus 18.
Okay. So everyone's aiming for that. You can't go above that. So it's a level playing field loudness wise for
Yes.
everybody. So it's not like, oh, well, this one was mastered. This Atmos mix was mastered louder, so I like it more. No, those
That
days
goes
are
away.
over with Atmos. So you just have to turn it up louder.
And for people who might not know, minus 18 LUFS probably doesn't mean anything to most folks, but and stereo mix today usually is coming in on the quiet side at like minus 10 LUFS, and on the loud side at minus 7 or minus 6. And we have to remember, this is a logarithmic scale. So it's not, as you go from minus 18 to minus 17, the change is this big. Minus 17 to minus 16, it's this big. 16 to 15, now it's this big. So the change, like the difference in loudness between minus 18 and minus 8 is
extreme.
Huge.
Yeah. Yeah. That's when I first heard that was going to be the target level. I was like, damn, that's so quiet compared to what, we're used to with our, mixing and mastering for stereo.
Yeah.
So I was like, damn, that's kind of cool though, because it just takes away that that worry of, oh no, is this going to be loud enough for everybody? Like, so you can just kind of focus on actually doing a great mix and letting all the frequencies be what they are, and the carving, like you said. You can just actually, you don't have to worry about that anymore. You can just actually put everything where you want it to, all the instruments, and let everything breathe and be, natural. So
Yeah.
that's great.
And it's not that we don't have to do any of that stuff. It's just that we realized, like Matt and I both were like, are are you finding that you're using less EQ and less compression on things? Yeah. Are you like kind of like are we sure we're doing the right thing here? You still have to do some of it because you have to make it pleasing, and ultimately it is going to end up in headphones. But the amazing thing about the binaural headphone thing, which might be, at least currently to me, the most impressive thing about it, is it delivers on that. Like the lack of compression, the less need for crazy carved EQ and all that stuff still works on the headphones to a much greater degree than it does in a standard stereo mix. It just feels like you have more space in
Yeah.
there.
Hell yeah. So yeah, I mean, I'm like I told Matt, I mean, I haven't had any requests for Atmos yet in
Right.
my world. So when I do get those requests, I'll be sending them to you guys,
Awesome.
to you guys. And if you're not available, maybe because like I know Matt Boudreau is doing it as well.
Yep.
So yeah, I mean, I have you guys and have the connections if I ever need to send it over. But maybe later this year, if there becomes like an extreme demand, then I might consider setting it up here with help from you guys probably. But yeah, I mean, for me, I'm still just heavily into the stereo world with metal and what I'm doing, which has been going pretty good. But yeah, man, I'm just like, I'm excited for the future of audio. Like I'm constantly trying to stay up to date on, the most recent technologies and just trying to stay like, on the edge. So it's cool to hear it's cool to hear Atmos in your room, and just to be up to date with all this new technology and where the industry is going. So yeah, man. And to take it on a different topic here, I wanted to ask you about some of the work you've done in the past with like you've done mixing with U2, and you've done a lot of stuff for TV. Like we have High School Musical and Zombies 2. So can you tell me and the listeners a little bit about your experience working on the mix with U2, Songs of Experience? Any kind of like inside studio information you could give us on that?
So I actually worked on a B side for Songs of Experience, and I was a co-mixer on that. And the gig came to me through a great mixer friend of mine named Brian Cook. Brian's the other mixer on the song. At the time, Brian had just had his second daughter and was just overwhelmed with work. And he called me up and said, "Hey, I'm doing this thing with, like in hushed tones, like with you too. Like, would you be interested in jumping in? It's going to be a version of a song that they're putting on the album, but it's just strings and vocals and maybe a couple little guitar pieces." So that's where we started. And I kind of did a lot of the sort of, I'll call it the foundational mixing, I guess. I definitely don't want to take away in any way from what Brian did, because he was as or more important to the final product than I was. But I spent a lot of time sorting through the string parts, just trying to come up with the best sort of panning schemes, because parts would come in and out, and like, how are we going to arrange this in a way that makes sense to the listener, and kind of getting the basic sounds together. And then once I got it to that point, I would hand it off to Brian, and then Brian would do his tweaks and make changes to whatever I had done. And he was the interface with the band and the management and whatnot. What was interesting is the band apparently liked the string mix so much that then they said, "Hey, let's do a version of this with the band and the strings." So then another version was made with that. Now, I believe it was Tom Elmhurst who mixed the record. So he had already mixed the band version of this. So all they had to do was take our mix and Tom's mix and kind of put them together. And then there was some discussion apparently about, and that's, with big bands, there's ideas flying all over the place all the time, and where it's going to land, you have no idea until the final decision is made. And we had heard at one point, like, wow, maybe they're so happy with this one that this will be the version, like the actual album version. Ultimately, they went with the sort of band and strings version, but it was a bonus track. I think that first came out as like part of their exclusive release through Target or something like that.
Okay.
But it became apparently the band liked it enough that when they play the song live, and the song's called Lights of Home, we did I think it's called the St. Peter's Strings version. They played that version live, and they made it the Record Store Day release for that year, the year the album came out. So you could go and buy exclusively on Record Store Day just our version of
Hell yeah.
that song. So it was a really cool moment. Obviously, just to be attached to a band with such a long and storied career as U2, whose work I deeply appreciate, was an amazing, part of my career.
Hell yeah, absolutely. That's a huge credit, man. That's awesome. So yeah, I also want to ask you about your private studio. It says Studio P. Is that
so? That's actually gone now.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, when Matt and that was in Pacoima. I just had a little space that was part of a residential home over there that I rented for 11, 12 years, something like that. Actually, I just moved out in November. So what was that? 2022. So 2013 years I was there. And it was just a little space that I'd set up with the idea being I can do overdubs here. I can do mixing here. And, if I have to do any serious tracking work, we're in Los Angeles. There's any number of big studios we can go to. Of course, over time, people come in and they're like, hey, I've got this paper clip and this gum wrapper, and I'd like to make a 12-song album. Then I ended up doing a whole bunch more, tracking drums there and all sorts of stuff for people. But after the Atmos thing launched and was, has been so far very successful for us, it just made more sense for me to be at Sound City in Studio Deluxe with Matt. So now Studio P is sadly no more. It will forever have a special place in my heart, and now all my gear lives at Sound City with Matt.
That's great though, because now it's like you're focusing on the Atmos stuff, and just in general, just having less overhead is always great. So
yeah, and that actually, if again, it's boring financial stuff, but my whole journey from the beginning of my career, I went to Berklee College of Music. I graduated in 1999. So in my early days first I moved to Nashville. I worked as a studio tech at Ocean Way, Nashville for maybe 6 months. And then I moved to New York and I worked as a studio tech in New York City at an amazing studio called Right Track Recording. And then for health reasons, I mean, I'll be brutally honest, I've never actually said this in public before, but I'm going to start because I think it's important for people to know. I have most of my life struggled with depression, and I was going through kind of a roller coaster of I need treatment, I don't need treatment, I need treatment, or I have money, I can afford treatment, I don't have money, I can gut this out. And I was working at Right Track, which was one of my dream jobs at one of the best studios in Manhattan, run by some amazing people. But I was in horrible shape. And I sort of had a moment where I realized this job is like my life as is constituted, doing this job at the studio where I was regularly working 100+ hours, which anybody who's worked in a big recording studio knows that story. That's not specific to me. But coupled with my depression, I couldn't handle it. I just couldn't do it. And I realized I was 24, 25 at the time. And I was like, all right, if I don't get a handle on this thing, it's going to do me in. Right. If I don't take this seriously, it's going to kill me. So I had to quit my dream job. I ended up leaving New York City, moving back to Boston and working in the AV department at Harvard University for 4.5 years, mainly because it was a steady job with regular hours and benefits, and it allowed me to get treatment.
yeah. Totally. Yeah, like just to interject for a second.
Yeah,
I don't mean to cut you off, but I think it's
not at
such an
all.
important thing to do for yourself. There's a lot of people, I totally understand when you're so passionate about your career path and you want to go so hard 110% and
Yeah,
like to maintain the career and to get that gig or to just prove yourself. And a lot of people will like go into it and they'll just like grind so hard, but they'll forget to really consider, okay, what are my needs? Like, what do I need for myself? Like, am I showing up for myself first? Because if you don't show up for yourself first, over time, like you said, it'll just bury you into the ground if you're putting so many hours into a job and you're ignoring what you need as an individual.
yeah.
So I think that was obviously the perfect decision like for you to do that. Yeah.
It really, it was, and truthfully, I got backed into a corner. Really, my disease gave me no choice. Well, I had two choices actually. One was do what I did. The other was don't do that, and I'd be dead. There's no doubt in my mind. I would not have my despair over my situation, and despair is even the wrong word. It's so tough to talk about depression because it's not just feeling sad. It's just sort of a lack of feeling much of anything and then sort of weirdly feeling bad about that.
Yeah.
But it's just emptiness. And there just comes a point where you go, you know what? There's no, if this is what my life is going to look like, there's no point in living. And that would have been the end. So, and that scared me, thankfully. So I said, nope, this is a choice I'm going to make. I felt like I was letting myself down. I felt like I was letting the people in my life down who, I had worked so hard to get to this point. A lot of people had made my parents come to mind immediately. They got me through college and supported me in this crazy career decision I was making. And now when it looked like I was on the path to doing something that they could recognize as being success, I was going to pull the plug and go do something else. And that just felt awful. But that was the choice I made. And it was the right choice. And I spent 4.5 years at Harvard. I did get myself together. I met the woman who would become my wife during that period of time too. So all of that, all a positive. And then around age 30, I just had a moment where I was like, I need to know. I need to know whether or not I could have achieved what I wanted to achieve in the music business. It had never really gone away. And I had this truthfully really good job at Harvard. I wasn't going to get wealthy doing it, but man, retirement benefits, all sorts of time off. Summers were pretty mellow there. Great people. I worked with a fantastic crew of people there. And I chucked it all and said to my now wife of like, I think I want to move to LA. And she thankfully was, she was at a point in her life where she was ready to make a change too. So we did. We picked up and moved here, and I started all over again at age 30.
Wow, it's great that she was so supportive of that because I'm sure a lot, certain people would be like, "You're changing your career now," like
Right.
it would be easy to be a little hesitant to pick up and move to a different city and do a different career. So I think that's so important too, is being, having a partner that supports you is
Huge.
a paramount to your own success and the relationship success. But
Huge.
it's awesome that she was so supportive of you for that. And yeah, man, like I think there's nothing wrong with changing course, and like you held on to that dream, and the fact that you reconnected with it later after you took care of yourself is like to me that's beautiful, and thank you for sharing that, because I'm sure it's not super comfortable to share that, like the depression and all that, but I've known a lot of people that have gone through that, and it's depression means different things to everyone. So yeah, I think that's beautiful, dude. So thank you for sharing that.
You're welcome. Yeah, and I've always been open, sort of within my circle of people. I've never been afraid to say it. Whenever I've talked about it publicly, it's always been I had this health issue. Because I grew up during a time when it wasn't okay to talk about this. It was seen as a weakness. And I had people warning me even in those earlier years when I would talk sort of more publicly than other people, but not publicly.
Mm-hmm.
People go, "Hey, I don't know if you want to talk about this because people are going to think." And I kind of always felt like, well, They're going to think what they're going to think. I don't have any control over that. This is who I am. It's a huge part of my day-to-day life is managing this. So, better to have it out there. And obviously we live in a much more accepting world when it comes to mental health issues today. So if I can be a part of advancing that, then that's important to me.
Yeah, and I even recall like when I was younger, therapy was taboo and like
Yeah.
it was like frowned upon or like seemed like there's something seriously wrong with you if you were in therapy. But now it's like it's much more accepted.
Everybody's doing it.
Yeah, and I think everyone should do it, even if you're not necessarily struggling majorly with anything specific. I think just therapy in general for everybody is beneficial. So.
Yeah.
Yeah, obviously, like,
I feel like we got off on this side topic though, and I didn't ever answer the original question.
That's cool. That's cool. Well, I'm trying to remember what my question was. What was my question? We was it YouTube?
We were talking about U2 and then
Shit. Your
the
studio.
TV stuff.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
in the studio, right.
Studio piece.
So here's where I was going with that before I got off on the depression side topic. When I restarted my career in Los Angeles and had to rebuild everything, and eventually, like, I'm so thankful, through a series of events, I ended up landing with Matt engineering for him, which was a godsend. Matt is a lovely human being and turned out to be a really, like, he's not just somebody that I've worked for and with and partnered with. He's a great friend. And during the time that I started working with Matt, we were doing some pretty solidly budgeted records for major labels. And it wasn't, the days of wine and roses with, all the stereotypical, like, oh, we're bringing in, drugs and everybody's buying a Bentley and all that stuff. It wasn't like that, but we had money where we all got paid well to do our jobs. And that started going away, and the pressure started getting greater to do more with less or do the same amount with less, to the point where, we're talking about 1990s, a $200,000 budget to make a record not only wasn't out of the question, kind of normal, right? And then by 2010 or 2012, if you could get $20,000 to make the same kind of record, right? So was one too much and one too little? Probably. The real cost should probably be somewhere in between, but that was the reality. And I kind of felt like I'd done everything I was supposed to do, right? I got the job, I landed with the great producer, and Matt was super supportive of me and my career. And then the business shifted, right? And I felt like I had climbed the ladder I was supposed to climb, and now I just had one more, maybe two more rungs to go. And then they chopped the ladder off because the money wasn't there anymore. That's nobody's fault. That just is what it is. But my life very quickly became about, first of all, how do I find clients? I never reached, had I gone one more rung up the ladder, maybe I could have built a credit list that looks a little more impressive. Maybe I could have attracted clients that I wanted to work with, that were going to resonate more with, future clients that I wanted to work with. Cause all that stuff's super important. That's our resume. That shows, like, here's the kind of music I work on. Here are the people that have trusted me to do the work. And I didn't feel like I quite had that. I'd done some great stuff with Matt, but Matt's name is at the top. So, if you're going to, and truthfully, if I'm me as an artist and my choice is, should I hire, Matt Wallace to do this, or should I hire Will Kennedy? Well, I know who Matt Wallace is, and I see his long list of credits. If it were me, I'd hire Matt Wallace too, especially if we're charging similar amounts of money, right?
Sure, I see that point for sure.
Yeah, it just makes sense. So I had to kind of go into keep my overhead low mode. Like, I love doing this. I want to keep doing it. I'm not going to be, I don't want to put myself in a position where the amount of money I'm paying for equipment or for studio rent or whatever means that one bad month and I'm out of business. So one of the greatest things about Studio P was the rent was incredibly cheap. The space was great. I loved it. Wasn't the most impressive place to walk into, at least from the outside. But I knew that if I had a month where nobody hired me, I could still write the rent check and I didn't have to find a new place for my gear or sell a piece of gear, whatever. But that becomes its own weird cycle too, where when you're constantly thinking about, I got to keep the overhead down, I can't take financial risks. It also kind of gets in the way of growing your business over the long term.
Yeah, absolutely. I totally relate to that because that's how I operate now. Like I try to I'm pretty conservative financially, so I try
Yeah,
to keep my overhead as low as possible. That doesn't mean I don't invest in my business or in gear, but I
of
don't go
course.
crazy because I've seen a lot of people that they'll dive in and they'll get crazy loans and they'll buy all this gear and get the great space and treat it, build it out, but they have no clients, or maybe they have
Yes.
one and they're like, oh well, the if I build it, they will come, but that's not always necessarily true. Sometimes you can get lucky and that happens, but majority of the time it's like you have to have that client base already before you. I mean, that's just such a crazy investment. So I've always been very conservative in that regard. So I think that's smart that you did that as well. But yeah, I mean, like you said, the budgets have shrunk significantly every year. Like in late '90s, early 2000s when stuff was booming, until now, it's like you said, the 200,000 budget, and then to a $20,000 budget. But now even a $20,000 budget is crazy for some
Yeah.
bands. Yeah,
I think maybe once I saw that much between 2010 and 2020. Once. And that was someone who was independently wealthy who was willing to spend that much on their hobby. Right? It was a
yeah,
vanity project, and that's fine, but they love to do it and they're willing to spend this dough. And that
yeah,
was great.
yeah.
But I go straight out of that into, getting emails from people about, hey, can you mix this song? I'm like, okay, what's your budget? $150. And then you have this argument with yourself, like,
God.
okay, can I mix this in a day? Is it better to make $150 than to make $0? How much am I damaging my reputation by allowing someone to think that this is what I'm worth?
Oh my God, dude, I struggle with this all the time. Every month, I'm like, I have some kind of situation like that where I have to have that battle with myself. Like, okay,
Yes.
well, I think it just depends. Like, it depends on the situation, just depends on the music, the artist. There's a lot of factors, but I mean, I feel like, you are very far in your career. You have great credits. You're extremely knowledgeable and great at what you do. So I think in a situation like that for you, it was you can politely decline something like that because you're worth way more than that. But I understand that struggle because it's like, well,
You
do I
would,
want to sit here and do nothing today, or make
yeah.
$150 and maybe I'll mix this in 3 or 4 hours and it'll still sound awesome? And I get that, but at the same time, you don't want people to assume that of you, because that spreads around, man. Like when an artist like comes to you or anyone and goes, hey, so and so did my mix for $150 and he's worked with you too or whatever, it's like you don't want that to necessarily go around because maybe more people will expect that. So yeah, it's like,
Or then they question your credits. They question your resume.
yeah,
Like, oh, if I can get so and so for $150, because I hate it. Not, I feel like anybody, who's reached the level that you and I have in this business, like you've had to sacrifice so much of other aspects of your life to do this. Now, I think we've all made those sacrifices happily, or we wouldn't be doing it. But we don't like to think about the fact that most of the world subconsciously, I think most of the time, judges you based on how much you charge. And I think that that's best illustrated by, and I'm sure you know this, I feel like everybody knows this story, and it transcends any kind of business. This isn't just the music business. The higher the rate somebody is paying, the less of a pain in the ass the job is. Because if somebody's paying you what you're actually worth, then they trust that you're worth that amount. And so the decisions you're making are correct.
yeah,
And they question you less. Somebody who's paying $150 thinks that they should have their hand in the process to a much greater degree than they should, because that's what you're worth.
yeah.
And if they had hired someone for 1,500, if they squeeze whatever rock they needed to squeeze to find the money, they never ask that of the $1,500 person. The crazy stuff that they're asking of you as the $150 person.
Right. Totally. Yeah. And like, I just had a situation the other day where, I I was speaking with like a potential new client,
Mm-hmm.
and they're like, "Oh, well, it was an inquiry about mastering." I was like, "Yeah, I could." They had recently finished a production or a single, and we were speaking about mastering, and they're like, "Oh, do you mix as well?" I'm like, "Yeah." They're like, "How much for a mix master package?" I'm like, "X amount," and then they come back and they're not a huge band or anything, but they obviously spent money on the production and whatnot.
Right.
So I'm like, "This is my rate," and they're like, "Oh, well, we already spent about that much on the production, so we know you're definitely worth it, and you're worth it, but we're gonna have to pass." It's like, okay. So
Yeah.
that stuff happens all the time, but
Yeah.
and I struggle between going like, well, if I'm necessarily like not at super busy at the moment, sometimes I'll think, okay, well, maybe we can negotiate something. Maybe I could bring it down a little bit, and maybe they'd be okay with that. But at the same time, I'm like, well, do I really have to do this project? If it's like a huge band or a band that I've always wanted to work with, or music I'm like really into, then maybe I'll do it just to get the gig and work on something I'm crazy about. But if I'm not crazy about it, then it's just a pass, and it's fine because I get it. Like you either want to invest in it or into your single or your album, or you don't. So I get that. I mean,
I
yeah.
had a friend and great mentor early on in LA named David Bianco, who you can look up. David was legendary in the business. Won a Best Engineered Record Grammy for working with Tom Petty. David once said to me, and at the time, I was more towards the beginning of my journey in my career, so I couldn't understand it in the way that I understand it now. But David said, you know, if somebody comes to me and wants to pay me an insultingly low amount of money, my response to them, and he was a very kind guy, so obviously he's saying this in the best possible way, is, hey, if you're not willing to invest in your project to the level that I require to do my job, then I don't know what I can do for you. Right? This is who I am. This is what I do. This is what I bring to the table. This is what I think it's worth. If you don't think it's worth that, or if you don't think your project's worth it, then we don't have to work together.
Totally. Yeah.
And I always felt like, David at that point had done so many huge things in his career. I'm like, well, David Bianco, it's fine for you to say that. Look at your track record, and somebody's going to come and hire you. But then I realized the longer I knew him and the longer I've gotten to know, other people who were my heroes that now I get to call acquaintances and friends and colleagues, that fear never goes away. Never. No matter how successful you may appear to be to other people, no matter how much money you have in the bank, everybody worries that the first day they wake up and don't have, like at the end of a project when they don't have something to do that day, that they're never going to work again.
Yeah, dude. Totally. Yeah. I think, I've talked about this before with other artists, but it's like, I do feel like even if you get to like a super high level, like there still is the imposter syndrome thing. Like I struggle with
God.
that. I go
Me
back
too.
and forth between having that like really bad case of that, and then I think, it's just like my mood and my mindset shifts throughout the month. Like I'll have imposter syndrome really bad, and then maybe something great will happen and I'll feel a little bit better. Like I'll get a call or like a cool gig or something. I'll be like, okay, I just try to be as humble as possible. But dude, like, yeah, it's, when you're at that level, and especially like the level that you and Matt are at working with these great artists, it's like, you know, you still have to reach out. You still have to, it's not like everyone is getting like 20 emails a day from all
Right.
these killer bands that want to work with you. It's like, unless you're at that top, super top level, which I haven't considered you guys at that level, but like, the Chris
We're
Lord
absolutely, yeah,
the Chris Lord
we're not
Alges,
there.
I consider you there, but like
Well, thank
the
you.
Chris Lord Alges and shit, where like they don't need to reach out to bands.
To me, that group at the very top has gotten smaller and smaller and smaller over the years. And at least on the mixing side, like the name everybody knows now is Serban.
Yeah.
Right? Serban's at the top of that mountain. And I don't know who else is up there with him.
Well, we got Serban, we have Manny American, fucking huge.
Yep.
Spike.
Spike Stent, right?
Yeah, Chris Lord Alge, we got Andrew Sheps, like all the mix with the Masters people, right? Like the big names.
But
like,
when you look at like and now this is a really gross way to look at it, but when you look at the Billboard Hot 100, it's a lot of Serban.
Yeah. Yeah.
And those, everybody else certainly gets in there. Not to say that everybody's work is great. There's no arguing that point, but it's just who's hot right now,
Yeah,
which is a whole other conversation.
I think there's trends. Like
Yes.
it depends on what is
What's
the
hot
style
right
that's
now.
trending, and
Yeah.
there is a mixture that suits that best and is getting a lot of those projects. So that's there's maybe one mixer that's doing the majority of the top 10.
That's exactly,
So-
the trends change.
Yeah.
And if you happen to be the person who does the thing that everybody wants today, well, your call sheet's full, because everybody wants you to do the thing.
Yeah.
There's no saying how long that's going to last. And it's no reflection. I mean, you have to be good to get to that level, but there are a bunch of people who can work at that level.
Oh,
it's
sure.
just whose thing is the thing everybody else wants right now.
It's still like it comes down to it's a popularity thing. It's like it's at the end of the day, it's like, yeah, these awesome mixes that Serban is doing, everyone else, like all these people at this level, they could do just as great of a job in
Yes.
their own way. That doesn't
Yes.
mean they can't also do the job. It's just the trend. It's just who is popular right now with these hits. So that makes a lot of sense. So yeah, I mean,
And I feel like Matt and I sort of had this experience weirdly at the NAMM show last year, right? So that was June of last year. We were just really digging in. The Atmos thing was going really well. And, he and I had a conversation like, should we go to because the NAMM show, for those of us in the business, is it can be a tough slog to go. And I was on a schedule of I was going every other year because I'd go one year and get so exhausted by it that by the time it rolled around the next year, I still wasn't over my exhaustion from the previous year. So I'd be like, I'll go next year. And then I'd go again. And I don't know that I saw a lot of tangible benefits out of it. Like people they don't know who I am. I walk up to a booth and say, hey, I love your product. I use it. I have suggestions. They don't care because I don't, Will Kennedy doesn't, for better or worse, move the needle in a business sense for them. And I think, Matt and I both kind of came from that, like, we're not into endorsing things and doing, that's not the game that we play. We're about doing work, and, you can think about our attitude however you want, but that was, and maybe some of it was, well, of course we'd like to be considered that way, but we apparently don't operate in a way that works for these folks. So how important is NAMM? Well, we went last year and we very quickly realized that Atmos was the shiny object that everybody was chasing because it was everywhere. It was like NAMM last year was like an Atmos coming out party. and all of a sudden we're going to the Dolby booth. Like, oh yeah, we want to talk to you. We're going to, who else like 5 or 6 different companies, people that, before we dove into Atmos, they'd probably have had no interest, and rightly so. Now they're interested and we didn't get better in 7 months at being mixers, at being producers or engineers. We just suddenly did the shiny object thing.
right. I gotcha. Yeah. It's like you've found that niche that all of a sudden it's, Atmos is the next big thing that, all these services and streaming and Netflix, they're trying to adopt this, and more artists and major label acts want Atmos. So now the focus is coming in on people who are doing Atmos, which isn't that many. So you guys are obviously one of the tops. And I know there's becoming more and more, but you guys, I think, came in right at the perfect time. Yeah, it was definitely a thing we were taking into account when we made the move and I kind of pushed, once we made the decision, I was like, we got to do this fast because there's going to be a wave and we want to be on the front edge of the wave, not the back edge of the wave. We want to establish ourselves in this space, early on, really trying to think about it as much, from the business side, because without the business, we can't do the cool creative stuff. So yeah, you got on the train at the perfect time.
It feels like, and it's certainly, I would love to say that it was a huge plan that we made it wasn't. We just, we heard it. We went, oh, it seems like there's an opportunity here. Should we? Let's do it. Let's see what happens.
Well, yeah, I mean,
could have been a disaster.
Well, not only were you guys both extremely interested and you knew you could pull it off and it'd be something you would want to invest your time in and learn more about, but yeah, I mean, it's like you knew exactly like, okay, well, this is where we want to invest our time, and this is you trusted your gut with it, right? So
yeah, that was a huge piece for both of us too. Is I think both of us, having lived through the last 10 years, and and Matt was doing it too, got to keep the overhead low, got to make sure that we can live to fight another day. And I think when we decided to make this shift, both of us kind of looked at one another and went, okay, well, we both understand that we're closer to the end of our journey in this business than the beginning. And we've tried it this other way and we know what those results look like. So what if we tried to change our thinking, and what if we invested more? What if we took some bigger risks than we've taken in the past? What if we called in favors that we haven't called in because we're worried about how it might make us look or whatever? And that was like, that was a huge shift in thinking about being in the recording business to us. But I think it was necessary. And so far it's been good. It's part of that, having to admit that for better or worse, this is a service industry. And when somebody's ready to make a call about an upcoming project, you want to be near the top of their thinking. Right.
absolutely, yeah.
Because there's other people that can do what we do. It's a fairly small community. It's growing very quickly, but it's still relatively small at this point. But the decision makers who greenlight projects need to know about you for you to get the gig.
Absolutely. So yeah, I'm glad that you guys decided to take the plunge at the right time, and yeah, I'm super excited to hear about some of the future projects you guys are going to be doing this year. So before we wrap it up, anything else you like? Where can people check you out on your website as well? KennedyProducer.com?
WillKennedyProducer.com needs a bit of an update. We've been so busy with all the changes that I haven't had time to address the web presence, but it's coming. We're working on it now. Matt and I have a playlist on Apple Music that you can find through. Actually, where do we? This is the confusing thing about Apple Music. I'm not sure, other than sharing a playlist, like how do you find it? But it's the the Studio Deluxe Immersive playlist, and you can find all of the currently released Atmos and immersive mixes we've done thus far there. I think the playlist is up to 130, but we've done a bunch more that just haven't come out yet.
Awesome. I'll put that in the show description so people can check it out. Put your website, and Instagram is Studio Deluxe Immersive, correct?
Studio Deluxe Immersive for the studio. My Instagram is WK Producer.
Perfect. Well, Will, thank you so much for coming by. It's great to chat with you, and thank you for sharing so much about yourself, and it's great to learn more about you, and delighted to have you guys so close to the studio. So I'm stoked to hear what you guys do for the rest of the year, and yeah, thank you again for coming by.
Yeah, no problem, Alex.
Awesome. Cheers.